Still not moved out yet. Hurry up and leave.
That's what my mother-in-law, Carol, said as she waved her hand dismissively like shooing away a bug. Next to her husband's mistress, Emily, also had a triumphant look on her face. As I glanced behind them, I saw little Ken looking worriedly at me. There's no need to rush me so much. Just get out. Emily sneered, causing Kent to look even sadder. I smiled reassuringly at him and gave Carol and Emily a cold glare. I'll be gone in 2 hours, so don't worry.
Fine. Just hurry up and pack your things.
My ex-husband, Steve, said with a nasty grin. Why did I ever fall for this man? At that moment, I received a message on my phone. Oh, it seems my ride is here. I'll be leaving now. The message said that my ride had arrived. So I grabbed my belongings and quickly left my in-laws' house. Thanks for picking me up. I got into the luxury car waiting outside. Steve and Carol, who had followed me out, were stunned.
What's going on?
What's this all about?
I am Hannah Clark, a 27-year-old female president. I've had a dream since I was little. That dream was to start my own design company.
Hannah, you're really good at drawing.
Yeah, I want to dress her up in all kinds of clothes.
I've always loved drawing. I was always drawing pictures of girls. I would think about what kind of clothes to put on them, what colors would make them shine even more, and things like that. I want to learn more about design. Eventually, I became interested in design itself and decided to go to a design school. There, I met someone who inspired me a lot.
Hannah, I really like your designs. I want to create designs like yours.
Her name was Amanda Johnson, the daughter of a big design company owner. Thank you. I like your designs too, Amanda.
I'm glad to hear that.
Plus, you're also studying business management, right? I really respect that. Amanda was learning about business management from her dad while studying design as a student. I truly respected her and was glad to become her friend.
I think you have a talent for business too, Hannah. Would you like to study it together?
One day, Amanda suggested this to me, and I started learning about business management with her. As time went on, I began to think about starting my own company. After graduating from school, I trained under her dad for a while.
I believe in you. From now on, do things your way.
A few years later, I received his endorsement and finally established my own company. Having achieved my dream, I was living a busy and fulfilling life.
Hannah, if you don't mind, there's someone I'd like to introduce you to.
One day, he brought up a marriage proposal. Apparently, the son of an acquaintance was single and without a girlfriend, and his parents had asked Amanda's dad for help.
I'm Steve Clark. I've heard a lot about you, Hannah.
That was Steve, who would later become my husband. He was a sincere person and always treated me seriously. I was drawn to Steve, and after about a year of dating, we decided to get married.
I'm so happy to have such a lovely daughter-in-law.
My mother-in-law, Carol, welcomed me warmly and celebrated our marriage greatly. By the way, there was no father-in-law, according to Steve. He had left a few years ago. After that, I was supposed to have fulfilling days balancing work and family. But one day, a message from Carol. Carol had contacted me while I was at work. At that time, I was in an important meeting, so I didn't notice the message right away. Moreover, I was so busy that I didn't have time to call her back. She's going to complain about it. Sighing, I called her back after work.
Oh, you finally called me.
I'm sorry, I was busy with work.
That's fine. I have something important to discuss.
Usually, she would complain or interrogate me about why I didn't answer the phone sooner, but today she let it go easily. Feeling a bad premonition, I listened to her.
Actually, I need some financial help.
I was stunned by the unexpected request for money. What? While I was still processing, Carol continued explaining. Apparently, Emily, who was Steve's sister, had returned home after her divorce.
And it's affecting our household finances.
I see.
It's not just Emily, but her 3 children as well.
Carol muttered. Hearing this, I was honestly conflicted. As a female president, I earned enough to live comfortably even if I provided some financial help. However, no matter how close we were, it wasn't easy to offer help without a deep connection.
Are you planning to abandon us? What a terrible daughter-in-law.
Sensing my hesitation, Carol started yelling. I sighed. I'll discuss it with Steve, so please wait a bit. Suppressing my frustration, I somehow managed to respond. Before we got married, Carol was a very nice person. However, right after our wedding, her interference became overwhelming.
Do you take good care of Steve? You're neglecting household chores because of work, aren't you?
She would contact me like this almost every day. To be honest, as a busy president, these calls were nothing but a burden. So, I once said, "Look, I'm busy with work. I'm a president."
Women's work isn't that important, so prioritize my talks.
However, she got irrationally angry at me. Carol didn't believe I was a president in the first place. In fact, she thinks I'm only doing trivial tasks like making tea or some clerical work. Look, I'm in a position of responsibility as the president.
What are you talking about? There's no way you could be a president. Maybe Steve, but not you. Stop lying.
Even when I told her clearly, that's how she responded. Carol never believed anything I said and treated me like a useless daughter-in-law who lies. Even now, she's saying things like this.
You don't do much work, and you don't help out here, so at least provide some financial support.
I'll discuss it with Steve. I said it again and firmly ended the call. Well, even if I discuss it with Steve, I know what the answer will be. Trying to calm my anxiety and frustration, I took a deep breath. Hey, Carol called asking for financial support. That night, I consulted with Steve about Carol.
Well, handle it however you see fit.
His response was indifferent. Since our marriage, his attitude had changed. Before we got married, he was so kind, but now he barely listens to me. So, apparently, Emily, she got divorced and moved back in.
What? Emily?
However, when I mentioned his sister's name, he flinched and looked at me.
Did you just say Emily?
Yeah, I think your mom said Emily. Surprised by Steve's reaction, I nodded.
We're not struggling financially, so you should help them out a bit.
Steve had always been indifferent to what I did or wanted to do, saying, "Do whatever you want." However, the moment he heard Emily's name, he started listening seriously. Naturally, this didn't make me feel good. Right. Well, maybe a little. And then Steve looked at me for the first time in a long time. I was so happy about it that I couldn't help but nod. Although I earn a decent income as a president, I can't give a large sum. From the start, The fact that it's support rather than a loan gave me a bad feeling.
Thank you. How about $3,000 a month?
$3,000. That's too much. How about $1,000 for now?
$1,000, huh? Well, it's better than nothing.
So we decided to provide $1,000 a month in support. With a little budgeting, it wouldn't significantly change our lifestyle. Shortly after starting the support, who could that be? I got a call from an unfamiliar number. Though suspicious, I answered it, thinking it might be a business contact.
Finally, you answered. Who do you think you are, making me wait?
Who is this?
It's Emily.
The caller was Steve's sister. She must have gotten my contact info from Carol. A heads up would have been nice. What can I do for you?
Oh, right. Thanks for the support.
Apparently, she called to thank me for the support.
But isn't $1,000 a bit stingy?
I got annoyed by her laughing words. Is this really how someone receiving support should talk? If you're not satisfied, I won't provide any support.
What? That's so narrow-minded. Are you saying my kids should go hungry? Wow, you're a terrible person.
With that complaint, Emily hung up the phone. Did I make the wrong decision? After the call with Emily, I started regretting offering any support. But in the end, I was the one who decided to help. I'll just wait and see for a while. So, reluctantly, I continued providing support, but I never received any words of thanks.
Hannah, let's move in with my mom and live together.
What? Why are you saying this all of a sudden? One day, Steve suddenly suggested we move in with his family. Apparently, Carol had hurt her back, and he wanted us to live with her to help out. Isn't Emily there? She's already moved back in with her.
Emily is busy raising her kids. She can't take care of mom on top of that.
Steve argued back in response to my words. We discussed it multiple times, but neither of us would budge.
I'm fed up with you, so I'm taking drastic measures.
In the end, Steve sold the house we were living in, claiming it was in his name, and sent our belongings to his parents' house. As a result, we had no choice but to move in.
Get to work quickly.
Yeah, since you're freeloading, you should be useful to us.
Carol and Emily started treating me like a servant. At home, they would order me around, clean our rooms, or cook what we want to eat. If I worked late, they would whisper about me like this.
What is she doing so late at night?
Really, she's so dirty.
I was already exhausted from my work and household chores, and their harassment pushed me to the edge.
Hey, let me help you.
It was Kent, Emily's eldest son, who came to my helper. He secretly helped me without Emily or Carol noticing. Why are you helping me?
Actually,
He reluctantly told me the truth.
my dad's name is Steve Clark.
Steve? My husband?
Yes. Mom isn't Steve's sister.
Emily wasn't Steve's sister, but his mistress. They had been together since their student days, and Kent and his siblings were Steve's children. This can't be. I was shocked by the truth he revealed and was at a loss for words. But soon, anger took over my thoughts. Looks like they've been underestimating me. I never forgive them. So I started taking action immediately. After making thorough preparations, I handed Steve the divorce papers. Steve, I want to divorce you.
What? Why so sudden?
I know about your relationship with Emily and children. When I said that, Steve looked annoyed. The fact that he didn't bother to make excuses showed he probably didn't have any feelings for me.
Oh, that's great. We don't need such a useless wife anyway.
Yeah, Steve has me, so you can just dump her.
As Steve was about to say something, Carol and Emily, who had been listening, chimed in. With their encouragement, Steve signed the divorce papers. And so we were officially divorced. Well, I better get going quickly. While filing the divorce papers, I contacted someone to arrange my departure from the in-laws' house. I had prepared in advance, so I was ready to leave that day. Therefore, I decided to leave immediately. Carol watched me with a smug smile.
Still not moved out yet? Hurry up and leave,
she said, waving her hand dismissively like shooing away a bug. Next to her, Emily also had a triumphant look on her face. As I glanced behind them, I saw Kent looking worriedly at me. There's no need to rush me so much.
Just get out.
Emily sneered, making Kent look even sadder. I smiled reassuringly at him and gave Carol and Emily a cold glare. I'll be gone in 2 hours, so don't worry.
Fine, just hurry up and pack your things.
Steve, who was now my ex-husband, said with a nasty grin. Why did I ever fall for this man? At that moment, I received a message on my phone. Oh, it seems my ride is here. I'll be leaving now. The message said that my ride had arrived. So I grabbed my belongings and quickly left the in-laws' house. Thanks for picking me up. I got into the luxury car waiting outside. Steve and Carol, who had followed me out, were stunned.
What? What's going on?
What's this all about?
Ignoring their surprise, the car drove off.
That must have been tough.
The driver, my friend Amanda, said while driving. I had been venting to her under the guise of seeking advice.
Just leave that family behind.
She had told me before, and when I informed her that I had filed for divorce, she immediately came to pick me up. Considering it usually takes 2 hours to get here, she must have been waiting nearby.
Now, it's time to show them, Hannah. Let's make them regret it.
Yeah, I'll show them. She was even angrier at Steve's actions than I was. I was grateful for my friend's support and discussed my future plans with her. For now, can I stay with you as planned?
Well, of course.
I was going to stay at her place for a while. Amanda's house was much bigger than the one I had shared with Steve and his family. So it wouldn't be a problem for me to stay there. Wow, Amanda's house is really big. Standing in front of her house, I realized that even though I was a president myself, a family that has been running a business for generations was on a different level. It was a mansion that made me feel that way.
Are you Hannah Clark?
While I was thinking that, a man approached me.
Let me introduce you. This is Tom Brown. He's a relative of mine.
He was a lawyer and a relative of Amanda. He was going to help me with various matters, including claiming alimony. I've heard great things about you from Amanda. I'm looking forward to working with you.
Yes, leave it to me. We will definitely win.
His confident nod made me smile. Then we immediately got to work. First, we filed a claim for alimony against Steve and Emily. We also planned to sue Carol for all the mistreatment and verbal abuse she had subjected me to. We have enough evidence. Saying this, I handed him the evidence. In fact, this evidence had been gathered by a certain individual.
This amount of evidence is more than sufficient.
Thanks to this, I was able to successfully sue them. Shortly after,
You're kidding me, right?
I got a call from Steve on my cell phone. Quite a greeting. I'm not kidding at all.
I received a lawsuit. What the hell is this?
What do you mean, what? It's exactly what it looks like. You cheated on me. Did he really think he could get a divorce without any consequences? I smiled at Steve over the phone. Don't worry, I'll make sure you take responsibility. With that, I could tell Steve was at a loss for words on the other end.
Are you serious?
Of course I'm serious. Don't think you can get away with underestimating me. I told Steve, who seemed incredulous, and hung up the phone. Their nightmare was just beginning. I would make sure they paid for what they did.
How could you do this to us?
The day after Steve's call, I got a call from Carol.
Sending that to us. What are you trying to say?
It seemed she had seen the copies of the evidence I sent along with the alimony claim. The evidence was footage showing Carol clearly harassing me. It was enough proof for a lawsuit and was obviously taken by a third party.
There's no way it could have been filmed like that. It's obviously fabricated.
I didn't film it myself. I calmly explained to Carol, who was shouting. In reality, I had no time to record such footage.
Then who did?
As Carol muttered, I handed my phone to the person next to me.
I filmed it.
What? Ken? As soon as Kent spoke, Emily started yelling on the other end of the line. It seemed she was with Carol.
Why are you there?
In fact, Kent had brought his younger siblings to this house. And as Emily started yelling, not knowing anything, he calmly began to explain.
If we stayed in that house, we'd all be ruined.
Kent mentioned that Emily seemed lively when harassing me.
I'm embarrassed to have such a mom.
How dare you talk to your mom like that?
Emily started yelling again, and Kent sighed. Then he handed the phone back to me.
I don't want to talk anymore.
That's the situation, so please leave them to us. With that, I ended the call. Then I turned to Kent. What will you do now?
I don't know yet, but any place is better than there.
Kent said firmly. Until I moved in with the in-laws, they had been neglected. Emily went out every day, coming home late at night. She would sleep all day and basically never take care of them.
Grandma loves us because we're her grandkids, but she doesn't let us do anything.
Carol, on the other hand, treated Kent and his siblings like helpless children. Not only did she not let them do anything dangerous, but she didn't let them do anything at all. If they tried to study, she would say,
You're a boy. Go play outside.
But if they tried to play outside with his friends, she would stop them.
It's dangerous, so don't go out alone.
Days of contradictions from Carol left the kids frustrated. Feeling sorry for them, I discussed it with Amanda and brought them to her house. Then let's live together in this house for a while. Kent smiled and nodded at my words. We reported and consulted about Kent and his siblings with Child Protective Services. As a result, custody was taken away from Emily.
In that case, we'll take care of them.
Amanda's dad offered it. Although Amanda had studied business, she chose not to inherit her dad's company.
I'm going to pursue my own path.
Now, she works for a small design company. Therefore, her dad wanted to raise Kent as his successor.
If I'm okay with it.
Kent responded positively. I trusted and respected Amanda's dad. I could trust him to take care of Kent and his siblings.
Of course, I'll help too.
Amanda was also enthusiastic. Now I can destroy that house without any regrets. One day, as I was thinking about this,
You've ruined everything.
Steve showed up at my office. He claimed it was terrible to take Emily's kids away from her. He probably thought I had leaked unnecessary information to his company. It seemed he came to complain about that.
Because of you, I can't stay at my company anymore.
Steve was trying to shift the blame onto me. Sighing in exasperation, I decided to explain everything in detail. Do you think I don't know anything? I knew about his relationship with Emily, which had been going on since before our marriage. And I knew he had approached me with the intent to deceive me for my wealth.
Geez, who would take a tea-serving office girl seriously? Follow our way.
Steve said that to me. While I knew Carol had always thought this, I was surprised Steve did too. You're totally mistaken. I'm not an employee doing errands,
But my mom said so.
he muttered, and I sighed. In case you forgot, I am the president of this company. When I said this, he looked dumbfounded. He should have been informed by Amanda's dad when he introduced us.
That's a lie. There's no way you earn more than me.
Suddenly, Steve grabbed my arm. Let me go. As I struggled, someone grabbed Steve's hand.
That's enough.
I looked up and saw Tom, the lawyer who had been helping me. I had a meeting with him after this to discuss alimony demands.
Stop this right now. You're despicable.
He shouted at Steve. Taking advantage of Steve's hesitation, I shook off his arm that was holding me.
What's going on here?
Eventually, the police, called by someone else, arrived and took Steve away. Tom glared at Steve as he was led away.
It's okay now.
Tom gently smiled at me after seeing the whole ordeal. I couldn't help but feel a flutter of affection for him. Steve and Emily were eventually forced to pay alimony.
You're joking. I will never pay.
Emily resisted until the end, but there was no escaping it. Amanda's dad pulled some strings and made sure they paid up.
They already failed as parents. This much they need to do.
He said this with a sly smile. I had known him to be a shrewd businessman since my training under him. With his connections, escaping was impossible. But how did they manage to pay? Emily had been a housewife. She had been barely managing to get by with my support and Steve's earnings.
Well, my dad found her a job.
According to Amanda, no one wanted to hire Emily, who had barely worked. So she was placed in a tough job. As long as I got the alimony, I didn't care what happened to her.
And what about him?
Steve paid up too. Steve was arrested by the police once. Since he didn't actually hurt me, he was released soon after. However, his arrest caused the incident to spread throughout his company. I didn't know, but it seems Steve's reputation wasn't very good. Steve seems to have deceived a lot of people. However, some talented employees had noticed his arrogance. The divorce proceedings started to reveal his true nature. So, some people started saying that he always seemed like a problematic person. Then, with his arrest, those rumors were confirmed. As a result, he was shunned by everyone and chose to resign voluntarily. He paid the alimony with his severance pay.
That's good then.
He also covered the alimony for Carol. Carol apparently had no savings at all. Apparently, Steve's dad left because he got fed up with Carol's selfish behavior. She squandered his earnings, and after the divorce, she couldn't lower her standard of living. So, she secretly received money from Steve to make ends meet.
Oh, then why did she let Emily stay with her?
She kind of forced her way in. Although Emily was Steve's ex-girlfriend, she had married another man. However, when it was discovered that Kent and his siblings were not her husband's children, she was kicked out. Her own family refused to take her in, so she ended up at Steve's family's house. Carol liked Emily because she was beautiful and close in age to Steve. And the fact that Kent and his siblings were Steve's children also played a big part. Well, in the end, they lost everything.
I'm curious to see how far they'll fall from here.
I agreed with a smile at Amanda's words. A few months later,
Hello, Hannah. It's been a while.
It's been a while. I'm glad to see you're doing well. I met up with Kent. Since then, he had been taken in by Amanda's dad and was now living separately from us.
My former dad came to see me.
Emily's ex-husband apparently still loved the children, even though they weren't biologically his. So, after being contacted by Amanda's dad, he came to visit.
He said that even though we can't live together, we're still important to him.
Since he already has another family, they won't be living together. Though he had another family, he promised to visit regularly. That's great, Kent.
Yeah.
Kent smiled brightly. When he was at the in-laws' house, he always looked so sorry. Seeing his change made me happy.
It's all thanks to you, Hannah. I have this life now. Thank you.
I responded to his words with a smile. You're welcome. Amanda, who was watching us, also smiled gently. Initially, Amanda had said,
I'll take those kids in.
But she was single. Even with a decent income, taking in someone else's children comes with many challenges. That's why Amanda's dad decided to take them in.
I want to become a great successor.
Kent respects his foster father. Even though he's still a child, he's enthusiastic about becoming his successor. As he spoke with shining eyes, Amanda and I shared a laugh. I'm really glad Kent looks so happy. After parting with Kent, I murmured. According to him, his younger siblings were also living happily with Amanda's dad. This reassured me, and I walked with a high spirit.
Hannah.
Huh? I turned around when someone called my name. There stood Steve, looking clearly haggard. You've changed a lot since I last saw you.
I was wrong. Please give me another chance.
Steve bowed his head deeply. Then he started talking about his situation.
Ever since we separated, nothing but bad things have happened to me.
After quitting his job, Steve lost all his severance pay and savings paying alimony for himself and Carol. When he tried to get a new job, rumors about him spread, and he was rejected everywhere.
But my mom kept spending recklessly, so we ended up in debt.
Steve spoke through tears. I looked at him coldly. So you're going to stick around to meet the president?
That's not what I mean. But you're the president, right? You must be making good money.
Oh, according to you and Carol, I'm an employee doing errands, right? I said, smiling at Steve. Sorry, but an office worker can't pay off debts or support you. You'll have to manage on your own. Steve's shoulders slumped at my words. While he stood there, I hailed a taxi and got in. Let's go. Leaving Steve behind, I had the taxi drive off. That was the last time I saw Steve. Later, I heard through the grapevine that he was caught by debt collectors and sent off on a ship overseas. As for Carol, she fell down the stairs and ended up bedridden. Looks like karma caught up with them. Hearing about their fates, I murmured to myself, well, let's get to work today.
Take it easy. You have a tendency to overdo it.
I nodded at Tom, who was smiling gently. After that incident brought us closer. We are now married and a happy couple. Unlike Steve, Tom was genuinely kind, and I was living a happy life with him. Oh, by the way, today.
I know you're meeting Amanda, right?
My friendship with Amanda remained unchanged. We regularly had meals together and stayed in touch.
But if you start feeling unwell, call me. I'll come to get you right away. You're not just taking care of yourself now.
Tom gently stroked my belly. Yes, there was a new life growing inside me. When I was with Steve, I never wanted to have children. But now I am truly happy to be expecting Tom's baby. Yes, please be ready to help if needed. Amanda and Kent were also delighted about my pregnancy. Grateful for everyone around me, I smiled at the happiness in my life.
I'm pregnant with Henry's child. The baby will be here soon. Please break up with him.
Before I could even be surprised, I was dismayed by my sister Lisa's words when she suddenly showed up at my house. She cheated on her sister's husband and then proudly told me she was pregnant. I never expected her to be so shameless.
It's because you couldn't get pregnant that this happened. You brought this on yourself.
You're just defective, aren't you?
Lisa and Henry laughed down at me. I felt a growing sense of disgust at the sight of them cozying up to each other as if to flaunt their affair.
The difference between sisters is just too much.
I was so stunned by their treatment, I couldn't even speak. Henry's look at me was shockingly cold.
I'm getting remarried, so let's divorce you.
If you want to, I'll break up with you. But I wonder if it's really Henry's child, because he is. After Lisa and Henry left the house, I was left alone. But being alone allowed me to think deeply.
Actually, about that.
Things are getting interesting. Just you wait. I will definitely make them pay for what they did to me. My name is Kate. I married Henry, the vice president and the son of the company's president, when I was 30. My in-laws, from back when I was just an employee, treated me very well, and they introduced me to Henry, which is how we got married. My parents also blessed this marriage, and our relationships around us were good. Even after we married, I continued working at the same place, and everything seemed to be going well at first. I never imagined I would be pushed to such misfortune afterward. Henry, who was initially kind, changed drastically after we got married. Hey, Henry, if you're going to be late, could you at least let me know in advance?
Why should I have to report my schedule to you? I'll do whatever I want.
But I have to prepare dinner.
Shut up. Don't order me around. It's all up to you anyway.
And yet, if dinner isn't ready when he wants to eat, he gets angry all the same. Watching Henry storm out while yelling, I sighed. Right after we married, Henry began to squander money. He dumped his work on his junior employees and started playing around. Claiming it was business, he wandered the night streets and almost always came home in the morning.
I thought he had settled down after becoming a working adult, but his true nature has shown itself.
What do you mean?
I went to the same college as him, and back then, he was famously extravagant, partying every day and dating multiple girls at once. It got so bad, the president got angry. I heard he was almost disowned. After that, he calmed down and seemed serious.
The reality that such a phenomenon as being too shocked to speak exists struck me. My voice, which I somehow managed to squeeze out, was trembling. I had no idea. The coworker who told me this nodded repeatedly beside me.
When he joined the company, he was really serious. Everyone thought he got scolded and it opened his eyes. That's probably why the president made him vice president.
So that's what happened.
Kate, you're well regarded in the company. Introducing you as his wife made him careless. He probably convinced himself, now I can take over the company.
Indeed, Henry's reputation visibly worsened. Some people are saying that Henry should be fired and the managing director should take over as vice president.
That jerk, he mocked me again. He should understand his place.
Henry keeps grumbling about the managing director when he's at home. It was uncomfortable for me because he's my direct boss.
Why do you, my wife, have to be that guy's employee?
I'm the accountant. Even as I trembled at his shouting, it seemed he didn't like my rebuttal. Henry hit the wall, making a loud noise.
Shut up. Don't talk back. Just fire him. It's harassment or whatever. You work with him. You can figure it out.
That's impossible. He's a serious person.
Don't take his side. You're my wife.
Henry only complains and doesn't seem to try at all. Moreover, he has never brought money home since we got married. I've been managing all the household finances with my salary. I'm working full-time now, so we're getting by, but I'm worried about the future. Hey, could you contribute a little to the household, even if just for groceries or utilities?
Why should I give my money to you? You work too.
That's no way to talk. Aren't we a married couple? You could at least split the living expenses with me. For the first time, I really stood up to Henry's anger. I was the one paying for everything, groceries, utilities, and life was truly difficult. It's not possible for one person to support a lifestyle meant for two. But Henry didn't understand. He probably didn't even want to. To him, I'm just a decoration to keep around for the sake of inheriting the company.
Geese, so you married me just for my money.
That's not it at all. It's difficult to maintain the lifestyle you want on my salary alone. That's why I'm asking for help.
Shut up. This is why I hate poor people. It makes me sick. Don't show your face for a while.
This is going nowhere. But I hesitate to consult my in-laws. They are good people, and I don't want to worry them or cause friction because of Henry. They are as important to me as my own parents. If the in-laws tried to talk to Henry, he would likely take it out on me. I didn't want that either. The house we live in was built by my in-laws. They provided the money and left all the decisions about the house to Henry and me. Back then, he was still reasonable, and it was enjoyable to decide on the house details together. Now, it feels like a distant memory. But to repay the kindness of my in-laws who even built us a house, I'll try a little harder. I set off for work, determined anew. Remembering the kindness of the in-laws, I've endured Henry for 3 years now. Henry's behavior has only gotten worse, and now he's a spoiled son. Moreover, he boasts about not contributing financially to the house when he's out drinking. Because of that, I've been labeled as timid and unable to hold the reins on my husband, or alternatively, a poor woman stuck with a no-good man, making me feel out of place. Even when I'm shopping, I feel like someone unknown is talking about me. Even within the company, there are those who look down on me for not being able to discipline Henry properly.
Why let your husband do whatever he wants? If I were in the same house, I couldn't stand it.
Is she afraid of divorce? Look, even with him like that, if she keeps quiet, she will be the president's wife in the future.
If the spoiled son becomes our president, it'll be like the president's wife is practically the president.
It's like a takeover. Such a quiet face, but scary.
Since complaining to Henry only results in getting yelled at, and if someone like him becomes the president, the employees will surely be left in the lurch. He probably directs his frustrations and anxieties towards me.
Kate, you look pale. Are you okay?
John, yes, I'm okay.
If you ever have any troubles, feel free to talk to me.
Thank you, I appreciate it. My in-laws, John and Sarah, have also been subtly looking out for me, but I still haven't been able to bring myself to discuss Henry with them. Thinking I could still bear it, I kept postponing the discussion, which made me feel as if I was hiding something, tormented by guilt. Unable to tell properly about my situation, I became less talkative, and it seems like I've grown distant from my in-laws. We now treat each other as if handling a delicate matter, which pains my heart. Despite them being truly good people, I am the reason they look so distressed.
Playing the good girl again, right?
Would she like to be the president's wife, even with such a terrible husband?
The spoiled son said she's a gold digger, might not be entirely wrong. They even have their houses built.
The workplace has become an uncomfortable place. I got depressed about going to work. The only saving grace was that my direct superior, the managing director, treated me with a very impartial attitude. Dan, the managing director whom Henry unilaterally dislikes, has been very businesslike in his dealings with me, despite my uncomfortable position, despite the distance with my in-laws and being the subject of rumors. His impartial demeanor is a relief.
Kate, could you make a copy of this document for me?
Yes, Dan.
Playing nice with both the managing director and the vice president? Trying to please everyone kind of vibe.
Thinking either would be fine as president, isn't she?
Jesus. Such an ambitious woman.
I am just doing what I need to do. No matter what they say, I'm just working. It's not my fault. No matter how many times I reassure myself, my hands tremble. Later, I heard that the in-laws told Henry, "We cannot let you take over the company as it is." It was Henry, red-faced and furious, who told me that.
It's your fault. Because you can't have kids, we're being told this.
I don't understand why it would come to this. He comes home in the morning almost every day, and there's no way we're going to have a baby? Why would they say that? Your parents just want you to work seriously.
You're saying I don't work. Don't be ridiculous. I'm much busier and contribute more to the company than you. I earn a much better salary. There's no way you would understand my work.
Once it gets to this point, Henry is beyond help. Like a child, he throws a tantrum and I just have to wait for him to release his stress. I shrugged and waited for the storm to pass while Henry continued yelling.
It's your fault, because you can't have a child. We need a son. Go through fertility treatment or whatever and hurry up and produce an heir.
I can't.
Don't talk back.
Again, Henry started throwing things around like a child, so I crouched down, covering my head to avoid getting hit. Okay, I'll undergo fertility treatment. Will you help?
Why should I bother when it's your fault? You're the defective one. Don't make a fool of me.
Frightened by Henry's rampage, but at the same time, disgust and exhaustion overwhelmed me. Why do I have to endure this treatment? The in-laws meant well by warning him, but it seems to have backfired. But such actions are unimaginable for normal people. If I do as he says, at least the tantrums will stop. I gave up on everything and became submissive to Henry. A year into the fertility treatment as Henry demanded, the tests showed that there was nothing wrong with my health, and I was capable of conceiving. The doctor suggested that the problem might be with my husband, but Henry stubbornly refused to get tested. Henry would become sullen and sometimes lash out at objects, leaving me and the doctors unable to speak up about the situation. Suspected of infertility, Henry told me to see another doctor, but no matter where I went for tests, the results were the same, and Henry just got more irritable. Could you come to the hospital with me just once? There might be things I'm not noticing on my own. I had been enduring his moodiness out of fear, but one day I finally gathered the courage to ask him humbly.
No, I'm busy. I don't have time to deal with your mess.
But without your help, we can't even do IVF. It seems there's nothing wrong with my eggs, so I'd like to move to the next step. I know it takes your time, but could you just help this once? It seems I was right to say it was for my fertility treatment instead of Henry's test. I thought he might refuse, but at least he wouldn't be too upset. He frowned slightly, but looked at me scrutinizingly.
You're paying for this treatment, right?
Of course, it's my mess. I'll take full responsibility.
Okay, then I guess I'll go.
His arrogant attitude was exasperating, but this way, I managed to get Henry to the hospital. He started talking about money almost immediately, making it hard to tell who was a real money grubber. However, seeing me actively trying to have his child seemed to improve his mood significantly. He probably likes being adored. No matter how old he gets, he's childish and immature. Even at the hospital, he reluctantly followed instructions and then, ignoring me and the doctor, he left on his own. I was left alone to listen to the doctor's explanations, feeling utterly lost. That's just the kind of person he is, so his subsequent actions didn't surprise me much.
Long time no see, Kate.
Lisa, why are you here? One day, my sister Lisa suddenly visited. Seeing my sister proudly smiling with her big belly, I had a bad feeling. Lisa had always been the carefree type, living at her parents' house until recently without working or doing much of anything. But ever since I married Henry, she had stopped coming around our parents' house. At first, our parents were worried, but knowing her playful nature, they assumed she must have moved in with a boyfriend and gave up. I never imagined she'd show up suddenly pregnant. From the looks of it, she seemed about to give birth soon.
I'm pregnant with Henry's child. It's going to be born soon. Please divorce Henry for me.
It must have been planned. Henry, who was unusually at home, embraced Lisa's shoulders and sneered at me.
Lisa is right. A woman who can't get pregnant is unnecessary. I've stayed with you to save face for my parents, but I've reached my limit.
All the money spent on treatments and still not pregnant. Henry's bothered by it, you know?
Henry looks down at me and Lisa, who smiles triumphantly. Their close and despicable appearance. I was beyond anger. I was dumbfounded.
I've been in trouble because she wouldn't get pregnant no matter how long I waited.
You're just defective, aren't you?
How they could choose such vile words is beyond me. They seem to think of nothing but how to hurt me.
He doesn't need any more defects like you.
I'm getting remarried, so let's divorce you.
I was lost for words. I knew he was promiscuous, but I never expected him to cheat with my sister. I had thought it odd how flirty Lisa acted when I introduced Henry, but I never imagined it would go this far. Okay, I'll get ready. Please give me a moment. Judging that I had broken, both Lisa and Henry seemed pleased. What drives them to this extent? I don't recall ever doing anything to harass or hurt them, but it's shocking to realize they dislike me enough to treat me this way.
Hurry up. Stress is poison to the baby, you know?
If you had any decent sense, you'd celebrate your sister and husband's new beginning, pack your bags, and leave quickly.
Hearing the words decent sense from Henry was surprising. Being lectured on morals and common sense by these people is the ultimate insult.
Actually, can you just leave now? A useless woman who can't bear children is no good around here. Go back to your parents' house. They're sweet on you, even though you're a failure, right?
Lisa's words made my blood boil. My parents, though plain, supported me as I diligently studied. But it was the same for my sister. Despite her late nights out, they worried and scolded her, caring for her until now. I don't think my parents' love was unfair. I felt that there was no difference between Lisa, who was a remarkable misbehaving girl, and I, who was an honor student, and I felt that I was unloved more. Yet, what is she talking about? I suppressed the urge to yell, trying to stay calm. It will take some time to pack and explain the situation to everyone. Please wait a little longer. As I pretended to be disheartened, they were visibly pleased. Especially Lisa, who despite her forced displeasure, couldn't hide the smile on her lips. Her expression twisted as if she enjoyed tormenting me. I don't want to see your miserable face. Lisa's artificial falsetto was followed by Henry.
My Lisa and the baby could get sick. We can't help it, so we'll rent a hotel today. Just leave now, okay?
After saying what they wanted, they left the house. The house bought by Henry's parents. They must have wanted their son to be responsible, and they cared about it deeply. My parents were worried about my sister, Lisa. The two of them trampled on everyone's feelings. I will get my revenge, absolutely. If he wants to, I'll break up with him. I wanted a divorce too, so that part is welcome. But I will never allow those two to be happy. Just watch. I'll show them hell. I prepared. I left the house immediately after packing, but for the divorce proceedings, I kept dragging them out for various reasons. Meanwhile, I actively worked on laying the groundwork with others and gathering evidence. Since my sister's belly was quite large, she would probably give birth while I was making my revenge preparations. Because of their lack of planning, this situation arose. Being unmarried and giving birth must be difficult, but they seem hardly aware of it. They told me to get a divorce quickly, like harassment, but I didn't see their desperation there. Truly, they are despicable people. I don't care if they are in trouble, but is it really Henry's child? Because Wondering, I boldly decided to consult with Henry's parents. They had also been informed by Henry and were consulting with me, so it was a good opportunity. Everything was ready. Now, all that's left is to show them hell. A month flew by and I received news that Lisa had given birth.
How dare you show up here? Still haven't divorced Henry, clinging desperately to him.
As I entered the hospital room, Lisa made a sullen face. The smirk on her lips meant she was enjoying taunting me. Henry also followed her lead, giving me an aggressive look.
I don't know what you told my parents, but we're strangers now, so stay out of it. I get scolded by my parents.
I think it's because of your unreasonable behavior, but there's no point in saying that, so I'll keep it to myself.
Oh my God, is Kate stalking Henry?
It's troublesome. I have Lisa after all.
They really are blissfully ignorant. I held back a sigh, trying not to show any emotion. Congratulations on the birth. My words were met with nothing but condescending looks from both Lisa and Henry. They can only act like this for now.
Hello.
First of all, well done on the birth.
The in-laws entered the hospital room. After that, my parents also came in.
Sorry for coming in such a large group.
We have something to discuss. Things might get a bit hectic from here.
Lisa and Henry, thinking they had won, sneered at me.
Dad, Mom, finally, a grandchild is born. Isn't it great?
Sarah, John, please hold the baby.
Lisa was already buttering up the in-laws in a falsetto voice. The in-laws had stern expressions, and in their stead, my parents spoke up.
Lisa, it seems we have spoiled you too much. Never did we imagine you would grow up to treat your own sister this way. We thought we'd always be on your side, but this is our limit. You are no longer welcome in our house. You are disowned.
My mom started crying upon hearing my dad's words.
We told you over and over to be considerate of others' feelings, but it was all in vain.
Wait, what are you talking about?
Lisa was bewildered by the sudden disownment.
I can't believe you'd say such a thing to me, someone who has just had a grandchild. I don't want to be part of a family with poor people like you anyway.
Henry was on Lisa's side. He put his hand on Lisa's shoulder and glared at my parents.
How unreasonable to say such a thing to your tired daughter who just gave birth. I can forgive you, even if you are Lisa's parents.
And then, boasting to Lisa,
I'll protect you, so don't worry.
Henry, thank you.
They were completely in their own world, intoxicated with themselves. After all the trouble they've been taking care of, Lisa's ability to insult her parents as poor people is unbelievable. My parents, who were actually insulted, must have been more shocked than me, but they seemed prepared, showing no sign of disturbance. Perhaps, unknown to me, there were already disputes and conflicts between Lisa and our parents, and they had given up on her long ago.
You look indifferent, but you are disowned too. I'm not handing over the company to you, and you are fired as of today. Don't show your face ever again.
What? What do you mean by that?
At my father-in-law's words, now it was Henry who raised his voice. Lisa was pale and trembling. The status she insulted her parents for, calling them poor, was now hanging by a thread. I struggled not to laugh as I watched the two of them panic.
I'm the only heir, right? We've had a child. Doesn't that secure the family's safety?
What area are you talking about?
The in-laws were appalled by Henry's argument. Henry looked pathetic, almost ready to cling to the in-laws. Lisa still hadn't fully grasped the situation, just flustered, comparing the in-laws and Henry.
I thought I could trust you with the company if you were capable, but even making you vice president was a mistake. I'll leave the company to a trusted employee.
What the heck? Don't mess with me.
Finally, Henry's tantrum exploded, his yelling echoing around the room. But his parents, used to it, did not even flinch.
I'm talking about being president in the future. There's no way I'm allowed to do that now.
That was your own declaration. We had nothing to do with it.
Even the usually quiet mother-in-law confronted Henry resolutely.
You say you're going to be the president, and it seems you've even borrowed money, but find a job yourself and pay back the money. We can't take care of you anymore.
What?
It wasn't surprising that Henry was in debt because he played around every day. He's the vice president, so he should be earning a decent amount, but his extravagant lifestyle and fondness for women meant that his salary was never enough. It seems he had also bought cars and condos without the in-laws or my knowledge. Who knows how much debt he's accumulated? And then Lisa finally seemed to grasp the situation, abandoning her ingratiating attitude and glaring at Henry.
What do you mean? This isn't what we discussed. What did I even have this child for?
But Henry seems too preoccupied to care. He's engrossed in yelling at his in-laws.
You told me if a grandchild is born, prove the lineage. I even did the tests for that. What was all that for?
The color drained from Lisa's face. It seems she would be in trouble if the tests were carried out.
What? I didn't know about this.
Henry frowned at Lisa's shriek as if annoyed by her. He glared at her as if to say she was annoying. Their previously affectionate behavior seemed like a lie.
What are you freaking out about? It's supposed to be my child, so there should be no problem. Why are you throwing a fit? I'm busy, so just shut up.
Actually, about that.
The doctor my dad had called entered the room with a troubled expression. This friend of my father-in-law had agreed to help with my revenge.
Lisa's child is not related by blood to Henry.
What?
The room went silent for a moment. Lisa gasped for breath, and Henry was sweating. At the doctor's words, their faces turned pale. Thinking, this is my only chance, I reached into my bag where I had secretly stashed numerous photos and pulled them out.
What's this?
What is that?
The photos were of Lisa. There were dozens of photos of my sister with men. Some were of a man and woman entering a hotel where the woman was consistently my sister, but the man was not always Henry. Since her belly had gotten bigger, she seemed to have refrained from dating, and I couldn't gather any evidence. However, my sister's ex-boyfriend had hired a detective to conduct an infidelity investigation. I compensated him for the investigation fee and acquired the results. Lisa's ex-boyfriend, dumped because she was pregnant, had hired a detective. If you wish, I've also gathered testimonies from the ex-boyfriend and other partners. Henry looked at Lisa with murderous eyes. He's trying to act like a victim, but he must also fall into this hell. And remember when we went to the hospital for fertility treatment? I have those test results too.
Tests? I wasn't informed.
Fertility treatments require preliminary tests. That's standard. The doctor said, "Let me explain," and tried to stop Henry. Yet, he ignored the doctor's words and left on his own. His selfish actions had backed him into a corner, leading to this situation. It was his own fault. Your sperm motility is extremely low. You're undoubtedly infertile. If you think it's a lie, take a good look at the test results.
No, that's a lie.
Henry's reaction was more delightful than I had imagined. His face turned pale, and he snatched the test results from my hand with trembling hands. His eyes widened as he read the content over and over, sweat pouring from his entire body with each word. His lips quivered as if he might collapse any moment. The DNA test also showed the child isn't yours, and the father is probably one of the men in these photos. I said to Henry as he became unsettled knowing about his infertility. Henry then thrust the test results at me and yelled at Lisa.
Did you deceive me, you slut?
But Lisa shot back just as fiercely.
Shut up. It's your fault you don't have sperm.
It's not like that at all. What an ass you are.
Henry seemed in denial of reality and then glared at me. What a mess.
Hey, you're lying, right? How can I believe this piece of paper? You're just harassing me. It's because you're rejected. The defective one is you.
Am I defective? The outrageous remarks made both sets of parents frown. It's unclear whether he's unaware of the surroundings or just doesn't care. The more Henry spoke, the worse he made his situation. My test results from every hospital came back normal. If you don't believe it, why don't you go and get tested at various hospitals yourself?
I can't be bothered with that. Cut it out.
Finally, my father-in-law raised his voice.
You need to stop. It's disgraceful.
Don't add more embarrassment, please. Kate doesn't deserve this.
At the words from the in-laws, Henry faltered. Instead of his yelling, Lisa chimed in.
It's all your fault. Now I'm doomed too. What are you going to do about this?
Shut up, bitch. That's my line. Tricked me and brought a kid into this. Just disappear.
What followed was an unbearable and nasty argument. It was a relationship, after all, connected by money motives. Both their true feelings and desires were exposed, making it embarrassing for anyone watching.
If it weren't for your money, you'd have nothing good about you.
Don't act high and mighty, you flashy old maid.
Both sets of parents just shook their heads in dismay.
I'm at a loss for words.
How could you have turned out this way?
The baby is the one I feel sorry for.
It's not the child's fault.
I was also worried about the child. Being raised by such parents, the future seems uncertain, and it's even questionable if they'll be raised properly. Despite our worries, Lisa looked over at us. Apparently, her own matters are more important than her child's future.
It's because you caught a weird man. My life is ruined. What are you going to do about it? Take responsibility.
Henry grabbed Lisa by the shoulder. He looked like he might hit her.
What did you say, you?
Don't touch me, you sterile man.
Truly, it was utterly exasperating. I let out a long sigh, releasing all the patience I had been holding back. Your irresponsible actions are your own, not my fault. In fact, I'm the one who wants you to take responsibility.
What? Don't mess with me. Always looking down on me. I've always hated that look in your eyes.
In reality, it was Lisa who looked down on me, who could only live seriously. She might have had her own grievances against me and our parents. What a coincidence. I also have always disliked your words and attitude. You've continually looked down on me.
What a way to talk. You're really an attractive woman. That's why you get dumped.
This must be what they call a double standard. It's just nonsense what they're saying. Negotiation is a waste of time. To conclude, I've decided to make you both take responsibility. I presented Lisa and Henry with a copy of the demand for damages that I had a lawyer prepare. I'm also filing for divorce from Henry. Since trying to resolve anything through discussion with these two would be futile, I took drastic measures. Both of you will pay properly. Considering the years and treatment I endured, the amount is small, but they exploded in anger as if set on fire.
The demand for damages from my sister. That's unacceptable.
A money grubber. Are you that desperate for money?
I just want to show them hell. The money is just a means to that end. From their reactions, this seems to be the most effective way. The spectacle of their disgraceful behavior eventually wore thin the patience of both sets of parents, who raised their voices.
Considering what Kate has been through, this is a small price. Be grateful it's no more.
Someone who cheated with her sister's husband now has something to say. Talk about not knowing when to quit.
However, scolding from blood-related parents has no effect on selfish people. Their eyes glared as if everyone but themselves were enemies. The sight of someone going half mad, hair disheveled, is terrifying even if you are prepared for it.
If you also say we're strangers, then stop pretending to be parents.
That's right. You have nothing to do with us anymore.
If they had shown some remorse here, perhaps the disownment could have been revoked. Foolish people. They prioritize their desires and trivial pride without even realizing it.
Why is this happening?
Henry and I made eye contact. I had a bad feeling. But Henry acted before I could. He glared at me with a murderous look and lunged.
Kate, it's all your fault.
Whoa. I instinctively screamed. But the expected impact never came.
Dan, you were here too.
Dan, who had been outside, restrained Henry. My father-in-law, looking down at a gritting Henry, seemed sad.
Our company will be left to managing director, Dan, so you can rest assured and work to pay Kate the damages.
Henry hated Dan the most. He had always feared that his position was being threatened. That fear had become reality, and finally, his mental balance was disrupted. Like a tantrum-throwing child, he started screaming and thrashing. But Dan, holding him, didn't flinch.
I always knew he was unmanageable, but never thought it would come to this.
Are you all right?
Take him away quickly, please.
Soon after, security arrived. They took Henry from Dan and tried to take him outside the hospital. It seemed Henry finally realized his dire situation. He broke free from the security and clung to my leg. The pitiful look in his eyes, filled with tears, was utterly revolting.
It was my fault. Please don't leave me.
Do you have no pride at all?
Dan spoke the words I wanted to say. He then pulled Henry away from clinging to me and protectively put his arm around me. Henry seemed to realize everything with this whole sequence.
Don't mock me. Don't think you're the only one who can feel good, you bitch.
With his parting words, I hoped never to see his face again. I just hope the lawsuit proceeds smoothly. Left in the hospital room, Lisa saw Dan holding me and her complexion changed.
Hey, bitch, you're seeing other men too, aren't you?
I don't know what you're misunderstanding, but she hasn't been dishonest about anything. I'm just smitten with her and have been courting her.
That made me blush. I looked down, wanting to hide my flushed face. Both sets of parents and Dan watched over me warmly. Later, Henry and Lisa were cut off from the family and chased by debts and damages payments. Henry intended to become a husband to Lisa, but she, declaring she had no interest in a man without money, left him. They also did not take the child. Instead, my parents adopted her and named her Anna. She's a lovely girl. It was always intended that they would take her in, but seeing Lisa abandon her child at the hospital made them realize just how awful she could be. She's not someone who can take care of a child. While my parents are mainly raising Anna, I, having returned home after splitting with Henry, help with her upbringing. I continue to work at my ex-in-law's company, maintaining good relations. My ex-in-laws also dote on my niece as their grandchild. The child is thriving, loved by everyone around her. I heard Lisa, needing to pay me damages, got into the nightclub business but apparently fell for a host and disappeared before settling her debts. Henry, too, pursued by debts and damages payments, was ditched by several women who were only after his prospective presidency. Moreover, with his massive debts and damages payments far from over, those he owes money to seem to be reaching their limits. Like Lisa, there's talk around that he might disappear too. Years later, I married Dan. We have 2 children and live happily. Come on, today we're going to Grandma's house.
Yay! I'm going to play games with Anna.
Don't be too demanding with Anna, okay? My relationship with Anna is good, and she's adored like a real sister by my children.
Kate, watch your step.
Thanks, Dan. Even after years of marriage, Dan remains kind to me. I fell for your strength of character, he says, cherishing me. With him, I feel we can overcome anything and stay happy forever. It must be a reward from God for all I've been through. Dan, I love you.
Me too.
I've finally grasped happiness.
Mary, Daddy made me a toy car.
Exclaimed 4-year-old Tommy, his cheeks flushed with excitement as he raced towards me, busy tending to the garden flower bed. In his hand, he proudly held the toy car crafted from a piece of scrap wood, eager to show it off to me. Wow, that's really cool. Daddy did a great job. I praised him while brushing off the sawdust from his pants. Just then, my husband, David, appeared in his work clothes, smiling. This is wonderful. I commented. David, a bit shyly, responded, I just happen to have the right scrap wood. He enjoys his DIY projects, using weekends to build things like tables and chairs for the yard. Recently, he fulfilled a long-held dream of completing a pizza oven. These weekend DIY activities seem to be a great way for him to unwind from his busy work days.
Daddy, I want to paint this.
Tommy looked up at David.
Sure. We don't have natural paints for toys. Let's go to the home improvement store and see if we can find some.
David suggested, patting Tommy's head and turning to me. I'm Elizabeth Johnson, a 35-year-old. I'm currently a housewife, but I used to work as a clinical laboratory technician at a hospital. But I quit my job to focus on family life after getting married and having Tommy. We're a happy family of 3, living contentedly with my kind, DIY-loving husband, 7 years my older, and our adorable son. After buying some paint and gardening supplies at the home improvement store, we stopped by a grocery store we don't usually visit to pick up ingredients for dinner. As we browsed the aisles, David and Tommy both excitedly agreed on steak for dinner. Soon, Tommy ran off towards the candy aisle. Then David followed Tommy and said, I'll keep an eye on him. Take your time shopping. While I was selecting beef for the steak, I was startled to hear my name.
Elizabeth?
I turned around in surprise to see Rachel Adams, a high school classmate, standing there with her shopping basket. Rachel. I was shocked to see her, and memories of unpleasant high school experiences flooded back.
Elizabeth's lunch is so cute.
My friends would say, admiring the creative touches my mother added to my lunches. Like a bear character made with ketchup on a hash brown or tulip-shaped sausages. My lunches weren't elaborate, but they were always lovingly prepared with playful details. I always tell Mom it's embarrassing for a high schooler, but she won't stop. I'd grumble, trying to hide my embarrassment. My friends would reassure me, it's fine, it's enviable. But then Rachel would chime in loudly, guys, look at this. Elizabeth's lunch is just full of frozen food. My busy working parents couldn't always make everything from scratch. But the balanced, colorfully arranged lunches were still a source of pride for me. That's none of your business. I snapped back at Rachel. One of my friends who was eating with us said, so, what about Rachel's lunchbox? Glaring at Rachel. Then, Rachel, as if waiting for this moment, brought her own lunchbox and opened it. It contained fancy-looking meals, but everything was homemade and looked deliciously colorful.
That looks so tasty.
My classmates gathered around Rachel.
See? Nothing like that trashy lunchbox.
Rachel said, looking at me with a triumphant smile. But that wasn't all. Rachel always picked on me and made fun of me. I was always hurt by her words and actions, making my high school life miserable. Looking at Rachel standing before me, I was overwhelmed with the frustration I felt back in high school. It had been about 6 years since we last met, at the most recent class reunion. Back then, I heard she was running a small cafe, but I wasn't sure about her current situation. Rachel was always strikingly beautiful, and that hadn't changed. But her personality remained the same. Arrogant, always needing to be the best, and a bit of a show-off. Long time no see. I greeted her with a forced smile.
Yeah, it's been a while. 6 years, isn't it? Elizabeth, what are you up to now? Your job was in the medical field, right?
I quit my job as a clinical laboratory technician. I left soon after getting married and having a child. Rachel raised her eyebrows slightly.
Oh, you got married? Living around here, in a house?
I could tell that the word married had flipped her queen bee switch. Well, we bought our house about a 15-minute drive from here. I rarely come to this store. I just stopped by on my way home from shopping. And you? I heard you were running a cafe. I tried to steer the conversation towards her. Although I wasn't genuinely interested in her life. Yes, it's going well. We're really busy with lots of customers, Rachel said, flipping her long hair. Just then, Tommy came running up with some candy, followed by my husband.
Mom, I want this,
he asked, putting the candy into the shopping basket. Rachel looked surprised to see Tommy.
A child?
Yes. Hey Tommy, say hello. I encouraged my son, who was shyly clinging to my leg.
Hello.
Tommy greeted timidly.
Hello? You're Tommy, right? It's great you can greet people properly, huh?
Rachel looked puzzled at my husband standing next to me, then turned her gaze to me. Oh, this is my husband, David. She was classmates in high school. Rachel Adams. I introduced them to each other. My husband smiled politely and greeted her warmly. Nice to meet you, I'm David Johnson. But Rachel looked at him as if he were something dirty, scrutinizing him from head to toe.
That outfit.
Sorry about this. I was in the middle of some carpentry work and decided to head out suddenly, hence the attire.
My husband explained with a chuckle. Rachel then smirked and turned to me.
The guy I'm dating is an elite doctor at a university hospital. Compared to that, who Elizabeth?
I couldn't believe her words. What are you talking about? My husband is. My husband calmly interrupted me and asked Rachel.
Which university hospital would that be?
The university's cardiovascular department.
She said that boastfully. My husband and I exchanged glances.
Really? Cardiovascular, you say? What's his name?
Michael Thompson. Why? Rachel looked confused.
Thompson, I know him.
Huh?
Rachel's face stiffened.
Oh, he is my coworker. He works in the same department as me. I had no idea he had such a beautiful girlfriend.
Coworker?
Watching Rachel stumble over her words.
I'm surprised. My husband is an associate professor at T University's affiliated hospital, specializing in cardiology. So he's Rachel's boyfriend's direct supervisor?
I said hesitantly. Rachel stumbled over her words.
What? Associate professor? But you said you were doing carpentry work?
These work clothes. My husband loves DIY on weekends. He even built a pizza oven in our garden. My husband and I shared a laugh at that.
So that's why you were in work clothes. Well, I mean...
Rachel stammered, her face turning bright red with embarrassment.
Please take good care of my boyfriend.
She said that, leaving the scene quickly. My husband and I exchanged looks of disbelief.
What was that about?
He chuckled, tilting his head. I responded with a shrug. Tommy, imitating us, also tilted his head and said, I dunno, which made us burst into laughter. As we were about to get into our car after shopping, we heard a voice, "Excuse me." Surprised, we turned around to see Rachel standing near the car, tears in her eyes. David instinctively stepped forward to shield us.
What's wrong?
When my husband said that, then suddenly squatted on the ground and apologized.
I'm so sorry for what I said earlier.
In her desperate apology, my husband quickly grabbed her shoulder and helped her up, while passers-by gave us curious looks.
What's going on? Please, stand up. It's okay now.
Michael, he's working so hard, and I've just insulted his boss. If I've caused any trouble for his career, please forgive me.
Rachel sobbed like a child. I approached her and handed her a handkerchief. David isn't the kind of person who lets personal feelings interfere with work. He's not petty like that.
Elizabeth.
Taking the handkerchief and looking at me.
Actually, Thompson is doing quite well in his job. Regardless of how I feel about your earlier behavior, it has nothing to do with his work, so don't worry.
I'm really sorry.
Rachel said, visibly relieved, dabbing her tear-swollen eyes with the handkerchief. I was surprised by this side of Rachel I'd never imagined in high school, thinking she must truly love this Thompson. As I pondered this, Tommy stepped forward.
Here, cheer up.
Tommy said sweetly and offered her a strawberry-flavored candy from his little hand. Rachel asked, "Really? Can I have this?" looking at me before gratefully accepting the candy with a smile. Perhaps the love with her boyfriend was changing her. I thought about her red forehead and the smile she gave Tommy. On the way home, David told me about Rachel's boyfriend, Michael Thompson, a 32-year-old cardiologist working in the same department as him at the hospital. Despite his youth, he's known for his excellent work.
But the poor guy barely gets any time off with all his on-call shifts, and he's ambitious, always trying to keep his superiors happy. He probably doesn't have much of a personal life.
That's so. From Rachel's behavior earlier, their relationship might not be going so well. I said, concerned. David, a bit exasperated, replied,
Are you actually worried about her? Remember how she judged people by their looks and treated you badly in high school?
I'm not worried about her. It's just that she seemed different than before. As someone who also loves a doctor that is the same as your job, I thought maybe I could help. I responded a bit strongly.
You're too kind-hearted, you know that, even after she insulted me like that.
I'm sorry. I could understand why my husband was upset.
Well, that's one of your good points, though.
David said teasingly with a smile, and I turned my gaze to the passing scenery, feeling relieved. The following weekend, David was all excited to use our newly built pizza oven. He planned to host a pizza party for lunch and was inviting guests. The guests were Thompson and Rachel.
Next weekend, we're having Thompson and Rachel over for a pizza party,
he announced 3 days after the incident. According to David, Thompson and Rachel met at her cafe and had been dating for about 2 years, but recently, Thompson had suggested taking a break. Not because he didn't like her or had found someone else, but for other reasons. Thompson and Rachel were having difficulties due to his busy schedule, hardly finding time for each other. It seemed he thought they might be better off parting ways for both their sakes. So, back at the grocery store, they were all ready. I recalled our encounter with Rachel.
They haven't officially broken up, but they haven't seen each other much lately. I haven't told Thompson about that day. She must have been confused, just having had the breakup conversation with him.
It's surprising. Rachel, with all her pride, going as far as kneeling down for someone she was about to break up with.
Despite their issues, it felt a shame for them to part ways. Maybe it's none of my business, But since you and Rachel were classmates, I thought of inviting them over together.
David crossed his arms, lost in thought. I couldn't help but smile at him. You once called me too kind-hearted, remember?
Oh.
David looked away awkwardly, realizing what I meant. You're just as kind-hearted yourself. But that's what I love about you. His ears turned red at my words, and he quickly excused himself to check on the pizza oven. I watched him go, savoring my happiness. The doorbell rang, and Tommy excitedly opened the door. Thompson and Rachel stood side by side.
Thank you for having us.
I closely observed Thompson as he greeted us at the door. Thompson was a tall, slender man with pale skin, his sharp, somewhat nervous eyes intensified by the silver-rimmed glasses he wore. My husband is always grateful for your help, I said and offered them to in our house. Please, come in. Rachel, looking uneasy, started about the other day. Don't worry about it, I whispered reassuringly, gently touching her back. Tommy, eager to share his excitement, grabbed your hand. The pizza is almost ready. I helped make it. Rachel's mood lifted instantly. Really? That's amazing.
I brought this for dessert,
Rachel said, producing a homemade cake from a paper bag. It was beautifully presented, a testament to her cafe-owning skills. Thank you, Rachel. Do you serve this cake at your cafe? It looks delicious. As I said, she looked at me with an apologetic expression.
I'm not running the cafe anymore. I'm sorry, I lied the other day.
Then, glancing at David and Thompson was chatting in the garden, she suddenly said,
I must look foolish, don't I? I've always been pretentious and awkward since high school. I was always envious of you, Elizabeth.
What? I was surprised. Rachel slowly began to open up. Her parents divorced when she was in middle school. Her mother, lacking financial means, didn't take her in, so she grew up with her father. Soon after, her father remarried. The stepmother had a young, frail child and paid little attention to Rachel, making her feel increasingly alienated. The stepmother never cared for Rachel, so Rachel had to prepare own school lunches. Feeling lost and without a place in her family, Rachel craved attention.
I just wanted people to notice me, even if just at school.
She realized that she had become self-centered, unable to see beyond her needs.
Elizabeth, you were always like a dandelion in spring, so calm and smiling.
Rachel spoke with a distant look in her eyes. Really? I didn't think so.
That's why people always gather around you. Without even trying, everyone just loved you for who you are. I tried so hard to get attention, but I could never be like you.
Rachel turned to me and apologized.
That's why I was mean to you, wanting to see you troubled. I'm truly sorry for how I was back then.
She continued.
Even at the grocery store, you were surrounded by this atmosphere of a kind mother, with a cute child and a caring husband. You had everything I didn't. I felt like I could never match up to you, and that's why I said those awful things.
I placed my hand on Rachel's shoulder. It's not about winning or losing, Rachel. You are you. Let's just forget all that happened. I want you to be happy.
Elizabeth!
Tears welled up in Rachel's eyes. Just then, we heard David's voice. Hey, the pizza's almost ready.
Almost ready,
Tommy shouted, imitating his father. Rachel and I exchanged a smile and began carrying other dishes and utensils to the garden table. Thompson, having to return to the hospital later, was drinking mineral water.
You don't have to go back to the hospital on your day off. Can it wait until tomorrow?
David asked, pouring wine into his glass.
There are some documents I want to review today.
Thompson responded, then continued discussing challenging cases and showing interest in David's research. He seemed to be deliberately avoiding eye contact with Rachel. Rachel was playing with Tommy.
I have a question about your paper, David.
David interrupted him.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes, sir.
It's important to switch between work and leisure. If you keep pushing yourself, you'll burn out.
David chuckled while checking the pizza oven.
I knew it, but I want to advance in my career as quickly as possible.
Thompson seemed a bit frustrated.
Why are you so rushed?
Well, it's because...
Thompson hesitated, glancing at Rachel. I sensed his pain behind his eyes. Is it for Rachel's sake? Rachel looked surprised and turned to Thompson. Thompson remained silent. Suddenly, the garden gate opened and an old man. He is Smith, a kind-hearted 70-year-old neighbor.
Sorry to intrude. I called out at the front, but then I heard voices here.
Smith, come join us.
David stood up and approached him. Smith, holding a bag full of fresh onions from his garden, said, No, I just bought these. Smith, who had a nearby farm and often shared his harvest with us, brought over some fresh vegetables. Wow, thank you so much, I said, just as a loud thud sounded. Onions rolled across the lawn. Then Smith clutched his chest and collapsed.
Smith.
David and Thompson rushed to him. He was sweating and unresponsive.
He has hypertension and diabetes. Looks like a strong suspicion of a heart attack.
David said while loosening Smith's clothing.
Elizabeth, call an ambulance and contact his family.
Right away. I asked Rachel to please look after Tommy.
David. He's in cardiac arrest.
Thompson announced, starting CPR until the paramedics arrived.
Smith, you're going to be okay. The ambulance is coming soon.
David kept talking to him. Rachel, holding Tommy tightly, watched the scene, trembling.
That's great news. No, it's nothing. Just please take care.
David said, handing up the phone and sighing deeply.
The family said Smith regained consciousness, and there's no life-threatening issue.
That's a relief. We all smiled in relief. Rachel, overwhelmed, sat down.
Are you okay?
Thompson rushed to her side.
Michael, your job is constantly like this. And I was just thinking, being a doctor's wife looks good. I was so foolish, complaining about not seeing you enough, not understanding how hard it is to be responsible for people's lives. I'm so sorry for everything till now.
Rachel was tearful.
No, if I had been more capable at my job, I would have been there to support you when you had to make the big decision to close the cafe. I always left you feeling lonely. I thought you couldn't be happy with me. That's why I suggested we take a break.
David and I exchanged glances and quietly left them to talk alone.
Dr. Johnson, Elizabeth, thank you so much for today.
Thompson and Rachel greeted us at the door. They both had warm, gentle smiles.
Come again, Thompson. Next time, leave work behind.
I will.
He replied with a shy smile.
Elizabeth, thank you. Please say thank you to Tommy too.
He'll be sad you're gone when he wakes up. He's really taken to you both. Please make sure to visit again. Rachel nodded with a smile and left with Dr. Thompson, looking very much in harmony. They had talked things through and realized how important they were to each other, deciding to start over from scratch. Rachel also mentioned she was planning to reopen her cafe. David and I sat on the deck chairs in our garden, sipping the remaining wine.
Being a doctor's wife must have been tough for you too, right?
David said apologetically. Yes, it was. You were always so busy and hardly ever home. I had no one to talk to about Tommy. David listened, looking down. But remember what you said when you proposed. Trust me, that's why I decided to always be by your side, no matter what.
Elizabeth.
David looked up at me.
As doctors, we fight every day to save the lives in front of us. But we can do that because our families support us. I've never forgotten to be grateful for that.
You?
Even when I can't be there, I always care about you and our family. I want you to keep trusting me and stay by my side.
David said, gripping my hand firmly. Likewise, I'm counting on you for the future. We smiled at each other and raised our wine glasses, toasting to our family's happiness.
You, Jessica, long time no see. At that voice, I was startled. There she was, the woman who had tormented me throughout high school, adorned with glittering jewels on her fingers and neck. It seemed she was still living the high life. I am Jessica, 46 years old. I married Logan, whom I met in college, 2 years after graduation. We had trouble conceiving, and at this age, I have an only child who just started preschool. Since he's still quite dependent, I brought him along to the high school reunion. And there was Isabella, my wealthy classmate, and she even spoke to me. Going back 30 years to my high school days.
Sorry about the private school, Mom.
I decided to go to a private girls' high school.
Sorry, honey, I can't afford to pay all your tuition.
I came from a single-parent family. I had to attend school on a scholarship loan. Gold Star Academy, a posh school. There had a ranking system where students entering from kindergarten were called pure gold. From elementary school were 24K gold. From middle school were 18K gold. And those of us who entered at high school were labeled as plated. The elite classmates were, of course, pure gold. Are you plated? I've never seen you before, was the first thing one of them said to me at high school. From what I heard from other classmates, this wealthy classmate's father was the CEO of a major company. He was the top donor to the school, even donating buildings. And his daughter was treated as the gold standard of pure gold, featured in the school's brochures. Anyway, I ended up being nicknamed Plated Jessica in high school. But I still enjoyed high school life. Only the wealthy classmate called me Plated. However, she continued to call me Plated every time we met. And then, the situation worsened. Back then, there was no awareness or consideration for personal matters. After class, when the teacher called me to the desk and handed me a form.
This is the scholarship application. Fill it out and submit it to the office.
Hearing this, the wealthy classmate burst into laughter and exclaimed loudly,
Hey everyone, did you hear?
Plated Jessica can't even attend school without taking out loans. She wouldn't even be plated without her scholarship. She's totally plated.
I clenched the form in frustration. Yet, I couldn't talk back, thinking of my hard-working mother. The woman who inflicted such humiliation on me was right there, in front of me. The wealthy classmate then scrutinized my child and said,
"Is this your only child? Do you have an older one?"
I yelled, "He's an only child. What about you?"
No way.
She chuckled.
"I'm not an older mother. I already have 3 kids, and the youngest is in elementary school. You know, being over 40 with just 1 child, that can't be the case, right? My husband is from that huge company, Imperial Heavy Industries. Being a stay-at-home mom with 3 kids, all attending Gold Star Academy, that's like living the dream. Some people are just born under a lucky star. Compared to that, you're stuck in poverty and misery forever."
It was written all over her face that our origins and destinies were different.
Hey, I find it interesting what kind of life a plated has led, getting this far. Introduce your husband. He must be poo anyway.
Isabella's talk went on for a while.
Seeing the only child of an older parent, I'm convinced it's a cycle of poverty passing on to the spouse. Why did you have a child so late? You're just spreading poverty, aren't you? Didn't you think that through? It's bound to lead to poverty, right? But now I'm getting curious about how plated you are. I want to see. Show me your plated spouse. I want to see how much he looks like poverty, out of morbid curiosity.
She was saying whatever she wanted. Despite everything, I enjoyed high school. That's why I came here, wanting to reminisce with classmates. But still, to be approached and looked down upon by someone like her. But, all right, I'll have him pick me up today. I'll introduce him then. I decided. Time to come out. There's nothing to be ashamed of. I called my husband and explained the situation.
"Sure, I'll come to pick you up."
His calm voice came through. "Remember what you said earlier. You looked down on me. I won't forgive her for belittling my husband and child like this." I smiled at the thought of what was about to happen. After the reunion ended, Isabella clung to me. Her smirking face, sizing up my husband, was utterly distasteful. Then the pickup car arrived. It was my husband, Logan, in a blue common car. Isabella said, "Ah, of course, a common car. We have an Alfa Romeo, though." Already looking down on us. But the situation changed the moment the car stopped in front of me and Logan appeared from the driver's seat. Seeing Logan, she gasped and froze.
"You are..."
Seeing her flustered, I felt a lump in my throat dissolve.
"Good evening."
Logan's voice was cheerful.
"Mrs. Parker, you look well."
He knew her maiden name, Parker.
"Oh, yes, good evening."
She was clearly flustered. Her face turned pale. I asked, "Hey, do you know each other?" The pretense was satisfying.
"Well, it's more like you're really something, you know."
Logan sighed deeply.
"Don't make me say it again. I told you I went to the boys' school nearby. This lady, she confessed her love to me during Valentine's in our sophomore year. suddenly acting all high and mighty, saying I suppose I could date you.
Isabella was trembling slightly.
But I had never actually talked to her. Being confessed to by a stranger, there's not much you can do. I turned her down, but then she threw her gift on the ground and screamed, "Pretend I dumped you," and ran off.
It's an old story, but it must be a dark chapter for her.
So, you did tell everyone, as promised, right, that I dumped you?
Isabella was still pale, barking out her words.
I did say, she asked me to pretend she dumped me, up to that point.
What?
Well, it's unheard of for a guy to be dumped by an unknown girl on Valentine's Day, right? Plus, someone whose side said, that's Isabella Parker from Gold Star, known for her high status and arrogance. You were so flashy, I ended up recognizing your face from occasionally passing by. When Jessica mentioned your name, it all came back to me. If you wanted to meet me, I had no reason to refuse.
Logan remained cool as ever. I said, with a bit of sarcasm, well, she was so persistent about meeting you. But it's true. I was just accommodating her request. Then I added, I had told Logan about being cold-plated in high school. When I mentioned a Parker, he remembered. We've often laughed about it together. But to think that you had once confessed your love to Logan, I never knew until now. For the record, I was the one who got proposed to by him. I stressed a laughing-stock part. But yes, that's the reality. Elitist classmate who looked down on others using her parents' wealth. She was the real joke, thinking she was superior for such trivial reasons. And she's still at it, which is quite comical. Well, since this could turn into a long conversation, please take a seat in the back, Logan offered. Isabella climbed in, her legs trembling, which I didn't miss. But I was soon to realize that her anxiety had another cause. No sooner had she settled in the car than she blurted out, I heard from my husband that you've joined Imperial Heavy Industries as a management consultant.
Yes, that's correct.
Logan responded.
Why, how could it be Plated's husband?
She began to rant again, sitting in the back seat. Her yapping was much like a noisy Pomeranian. You're with Imperial Heavy Industries now. I was clueless. Logan didn't often talk about his work. He stopped the car, turned off the engine, and turned to look at the back seat.
Imperial Heavy Industries is struggling. You might have sensed that. That's why they brought me in, the guy who fixed Samson Electronics.
Samson Electronics.
The well-known electronics firm in Korea. He was now tackling Imperial Heavy Industries with the same expertise that had revived Samson.
But why, of all people, does it have to be Plated's husband?
In her panic and hysteria, Isabella raised her voice, causing Logan and me to exchange looks of disbelief. This is troublesome, Logan noted.
Because both my wife and I have the last name Brown.
It's a common name, so of course I wouldn't know you guys were married.
Well, yo.
I offered support to Logan, now at a loss for words. Thinking that a poor Plated couldn't possibly marry such an excellent man is just your prejudice. Face the reality. The reality. Isabella was silenced. And my ignorance of Logan's role at Imperial Heavy Industries led the situation to evolve in unforeseen ways. Well, I came here because my wife asked me to. Logan continued.
You said her husband must be poor. That's what you said, right?
He asked her directly.
To be honest, I think your husband will end up poorer than me.
What?
She barked again at the sudden declaration. It was a cry of surprise, wondering what it was this time. Logan continued.
At Imperial Heavy Industries, I found the organization stuck in an old hierarchical system. It doesn't fit with the modern performance-based management. There was a lot of wasteful spending. It's only natural for employees who don't produce results to get demoted. And I was in charge of that assessment. I compiled a list of underperforming employees to present to the company, and your husband's name was on that list.
What?
The sudden mention of layoffs hit her like a bolt from the blue, her voice flipping in shock.
He's a director without delivering any performance. When I asked why, it turned out he was hired through family connections. Just a managerial position to play around on so-called business trips. With the management reform, such people were the first to go.
What?
Isn't he on a business trip right now? I think there will be news for him when he returns.
What?
Isabella's mouth trembled, no trace of her former elitism.
Mommy, that lady is so noisy.
My son, James, who was supposed to be asleep, covered his ears and spoke up. Let's be quiet and leave her alone. I soothed James while glaring disdainfully at Isabella, suddenly faced with such distressing news. I hadn't expected things to come this far. But it must be an unbearable reality for her. But serves her right. Logan sighed.
Raising 3 kids, being wealthy and all that. But honestly, if your husband gets laid off approaching 50, it'll be tough. You'll need to work too. But it's his fault for slacking off in a nepotism job. The world doesn't run on privilege alone. I hope you'll welcome him warmly. Luck needs the push of effort to become a real force. You shouldn't be complacent.
Logan spoke earnestly, adding, sorry, but cutting costs is my job. I was surprised by his words, but I felt a desire to repay her for making fun of our child. All your kids go to Gold Star Academy, right?
Yes.
Her reply was shaky, probably shocked by the reality hitting her. I pressed on. Gold Star Academy is expensive, so maybe all 3 will have to drop out. Huh? Too bad, it's such a great school.
The eldest is in high school, so maybe with a scholarship.
I could see her desperately doing the math in her head. Scholarship. I couldn't help but laugh. You told me, without a scholarship, you can't even afford school. You wouldn't even be plated without a loan. You're totally plated. And now you're considering putting your daughter in debt. Whether it's pure gold or 24K, that's ironic. Words can come back like a boomerang. Serves you right. Good luck at this age. My husband paid off my scholarship in full. Do you have anything lined up? Well, do your best. She was speechless.
I'm getting off here.
Isabella opened a rear door and stumbled out. She was unsteady and fell hard. There was a puddle, and she landed on her bottom in it, so her shoes and skirt were covered in mud. I addressed her one last time. witnessing her pitiful state. Pure gold. It's the softest and most malleable. I'm looking forward to seeing how much you'll bend, I said dismissively, closing the door and leaving her covered in mud behind. According to Logan, the restructuring at Imperial Heavy Industries seemed to be successful. A significant number of layoffs were carried out, and it appears that Isabella's husband was among those affected, as per the list. Meanwhile, I encountered a small world phenomenon. My mother, who started as a part-time worker and worked her way up to become the manager, runs a dry cleaning store in a corner of a supermarket near the station. She called me to say, "Hey, Mrs. Parker's daughter has come to work here as a part-timer." It seems the Parker family's business collapsed along with the steel industry's decline many years ago, and their company building and mansion were put up for sale. Isabella lived luxuriously thanks to her husband's position at Imperial Heavy Industries, but now that he's been laid off, the family is at a loss. Hence, she applied for the part-time job at the cleaning store.
But she's still acting like a lady, inefficient, and complains that even sweaty shirts are too dirty to touch. She fusses that the iron is too hot and can't even fold shirts properly, so we had to let her go after a few days. She won't last anywhere with that attitude. I hired her out of sympathy because she said she had 3 kids, but when I tried to teach her, she'd snap. "Who do you think I am?" I saw her in the park recently, wearing tattered clothes, and it didn't seem like she had found a job yet.
I couldn't stop laughing. My life is reasonably happy with Logan's success as a consultant and our well-behaved son. I teach James to be self-sufficient and to treat everyone equally. There's no high or low in life. Everyone just lives according to their own values. Cherishing this simple truth, I watched Logan and James playing in the living room.
"Where are you now?"
Working in Hawaii.
Kevin quickly responded, but a woman's laughter could be heard from behind the phone call. I could only feel irritation at Kevin, who lied so effortlessly. It was because of Kevin that Timothy ended up in such a state. He had no hair at all, his body completely shaven. It was too pitiful, unbearable to see. "I'll definitely make you regret this," I swore while looking at Timothy. "I'll make them experience hell." I was burning with revenge against them. I am Helen Martinez, a 55-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Kevin, who is 4 years older than me. Our only son, Timothy, has already started his career and moved out. Kevin works for a well-known company that appears in TV commercials. Perhaps because of that, he's a bit proud.
I work at such a big company, busting my butt for you guys. You should be crying with gratitude.
That's Kevin's favorite saying. In his view, those who work outside are superior, and those who stay at home are inferior. Because of this, I feel diminished whenever Kevin is around. I worried that Timothy might inherit Kevin's personality, but those fears were unfounded. Timothy grew up well and turned out to be a good kid. He has a bright and honest nature. His honesty makes him easy to deceive, which is his only flaw, but I love my kind-hearted Timothy. Recently, Timothy brought some wonderful news. He's getting married to a young woman named Fiona. They're expecting a child and decided to get married. The dual joy of Timothy's marriage and the baby filled me with happiness. I haven't met Fiona yet, but she's the girl Timothy chose. I want to warmly welcome her as a member of the Martinez family. If Fiona struggles with childcare after birth, I plan to help out without being too intrusive. Just as I was thinking this, Timothy made an unexpected request. He asked to live with us. Are you really saying you want to live at our place for a while? When I asked Timothy in surprise, he nodded seriously.
Yeah. Fiona is feeling anxious about raising the child. It's her first time, so it can't be helped. It would be great if you could help support us, Mom.
Fiona's parents live a plane ride away, so it seems impossible for her to go back to her hometown. That's why the idea came up that they could live with us for a while. However, for Fiona, raising a child in her in-laws' home might be uncomfortable. Is Fiona okay with that? I asked Timothy, feeling anxious. Normally, living with in-laws right after giving birth would make one feel uneasy. Then Timothy laughed and said,
Actually, it was Fiona's idea, so it's fine. Besides, she wants to get along well with you, Mom.
If that's what she wants, then it's okay. If it's Fiona's wish, there's nothing more to say. Plus, I have experience with raising children, so I should be able to support Fiona. But I wasn't sure what Kevin would say. There might be a chance he would oppose it. If so, only I could protect Fiona and the upcoming baby. So, no matter how much Kevin would oppose, I was determined to do my best. But ultimately, when I mentioned it to Kevin, he didn't object.
Why not? I'm all for having a young woman in the house. I'm tired of seeing the same old face.
His words were harsh, but at least he wasn't opposed to the idea. I breathed a sigh of relief, and then a month passed. Timothy brought Fiona home. Of course, Fiona was cradling their newborn baby in her arms.
We'll be staying here for a while, about 3 months, until things settle down, and then we might go back to our apartment.
Timothy spoke to us. I was listening with a smile, but when I looked at Fiona, I was at a loss for words.
Nice to meet you. This is Mary. Doesn't she look just like me? She's super cute, right?
Fiona showed off Mary while speaking to Kevin and me. Mary was quiet, not minding her mother's antics. Nice to meet you. Fiona looked like a woman of the night, wearing a low-cut shirt and a short skirt, her thighs fully visible, and her makeup perfectly done. She did not look like someone who had just been discharged from a maternity ward. But while I was taken aback, Kevin seemed quite pleased.
Wow, Timothy sure picked a fine wife.
Kevin was looking at Fiona, grinning and leering. Then he kept ogling her neckline. Though Fiona's makeup was heavy, she looked cute, which must have passed Kevin's visual test. Moreover, Fiona didn't seem bothered at all by Kevin ogling her.
Thank you. Your dad has such a dignified presence. He's really handsome. If I hadn't married Timothy, I might have fallen for him.
Fiona said that as she batted her eyes at Kevin. Kevin seemed quite flattered by her comments. Hey, can you stop that? I couldn't ignore such inappropriate remarks. After all, Fiona is Timothy's wife. Such comments towards Kevin are unacceptable. It was far too impolite. However, as I was about to scold Fiona, Timothy stepped in to mediate.
Come on. Fiona just wants to get along well with my family. Don't be mad, Mom.
If you say so, Timothy. Fiona laughed off the situation.
Did I upset you? I didn't mean to.
She pressed her chest out as she spoke, and Kevin, watching her, laughed and said,
You should welcome such a young and pretty daughter-in-law. It's unseemly for an old lady to be jealous.
What do you mean by that? I was irritated by Kevin's remarks, but Fiona had just given birth. I thought it wasn't right to be too harsh on a woman right after childbirth. I had no choice but to back down. Reluctantly, I decided to keep quiet. Then, as expected, living with Fiona and the others began to create a tense situation. Even though the postpartum confinement period had passed, Fiona made no effort to take care of Mary at all. It became my job to feed her milk every 3 hours. Of course, I was the one sterilizing the nursing bottles too.
My milk isn't coming in well, and my body is still suffering from the birth. Could you do it instead, Mill? After all, you're a housewife with plenty of time, right?
Fiona would say this, dumping everything on me. She wouldn't change diapers or even pay attention when Mary cried. As a result, I ended up taking care of her at night as well. Because of the interrupted sleep, I was suffering from sleep deprivation. Normally, one would be considerate in such a situation. However, Fiona would just lie in bed and give orders.
Mother-in-law, I'm thirsty. Can you bring me a chilled Coke, please? Make sure it's ice cold.
In Fiona's hand was a bag of potato chips. The sheets on the bed were greasy and dirty, presumably where Fiona had wiped her chip-soiled hands. Sighing, I reprimanded Fiona. Fiona, please, enough is enough. Taking care of Mary is also a mother's duty. And since your confinement is over, you should start getting up and moving around. I told her sternly. Fiona's behavior was too much to ignore. Then Fiona's eyes welled up, and she began to cry.
Mother-in-law, that's so mean. Timothy is so busy with work, and I can't rely on him. If Timothy came home earlier, I wouldn't have to ask you.
Fiona sobbed pitifully. Indeed, Timothy had been working late recently due to overtime. He works for a small company and had taken time off for the birth. Surely, the backlog from that time is affecting him now. But that was to consider Fiona during her childbirth. And this was her response to Timothy's efforts at work. What a truly unbelievable daughter-in-law. I looked at her coldly as I said that to myself. Just then,
I'm home.
Kevin came back. Without hesitation, Fiona rushed to embrace him.
Dad, Mom's being awful. She's ordering me to move around when I'm not feeling well. I'm sad.
Then, with teary eyes, she looked up at Kevin.
To say such things to Fiona, that's just low.
Kevin was completely smitten with her. He glared at me as I held Mary.
You should be more considerate of Fiona. She's clearly suffering. Stop being nasty just because you're jealous of her beauty. Let's just ignore this mean old lady and order some food for delivery, just you and me.
What? I exclaimed in disbelief at Kevin's outrageous statement. Why does Kevin indulge Fiona so much? It makes no sense to me. Fiona seemed encouraged by Kevin's words.
Dad, I love you so much.
She said that and hugged Kevin again. Kevin beamed with pleasure. And then, Fiona sneakily stuck her tongue out at me when Kevin couldn't see. I was completely taken aback by Fiona's behavior. Thinking about continuing these days made me feel depressed. I don't know if this was the trigger, but after that, Fiona and Kevin's behavior became increasingly unbearable. Days of Fiona acting out and me reprimanding her, only for Kevin to defend her, continued. And still, Fiona neglected Mary's care. She wouldn't even change her diapers. Just when I was utterly exhausted by this situation, Timothy, who came home late from work, spoke to me.
Mom, I'm sorry about Fiona. I wish I could come home from work earlier and help more with Mary.
Timothy looked so sad as he spoke, and it pained my heart. Timothy is not to blame. Even though he always comes home late from work, he takes care of Mary. Sometimes he goes to work on almost no sleep. Timothy felt terribly guilty, though he was not at fault. Then Timothy hesitantly began to speak.
It's also my fault that Fiona is so attached to Dad.
What do you mean? I furrowed my brow and asked Timothy. His face grew even more pained.
Fiona wanted to marry a man with a high income, but I wanted to marry Fiona so badly that I told her. My dad works at a big company. I think Fiona's real target was Dad.
What are you saying? I turned pale at Timothy's revelation. Fiona is still in her 20s, but Kevin is almost in his 60s. Though it was hard to believe, Timothy's expression was serious. Given Fiona's behavior, it was likely the truth. As I struggled to find words to respond, Timothy gave a pained smile.
I'll try to convince Fiona to leave by next weekend. We've been imposing on you for 2 months already. So, Mom, I'm sorry, but can you bear with this a little longer?
All right. I can't imagine Fiona will just smoothly move out next weekend, given her current state. She's been all over Kevin, trying to impress him. But Timothy looked so distressed that I couldn't push the conversation any further. So, I had no choice but to endure it. A few days after that talk with Timothy, I decided to go to the beauty salon for the first time in a long while. After this salon, I planned to go shopping. Fortunately, Timothy had the day off from work and could take care of Mary. Even Fiona, unusually, spoke with a smile.
You've been under a lot of stress all this time. Please take this opportunity to relax.
Perhaps Fiona had a change of heart. Kevin also approached me with a smile.
You're always working so hard. Go buy something nice for yourself.
He handed me a crumpled $10 bill as he said that. I had been neglecting my own needs because of caring for Mary lately. Excited for some alone time, I set out to enjoy my day. Later, I fully enjoyed my time to myself, and in the evening, I returned home after finishing at the beauty salon and shopping. I even bought souvenirs for the welcoming family. For Kevin, I bought some sweets with the $10 bill he gave me. He would surely be pleased. Yeah, I'm home. I cheerfully opened the door, but the house was eerily silent. Oddly, only Timothy's shoes were there. Where is everyone? Kevin, Fiona. As I apprehensively approached the living room, I was met with a shocking sight. Timothy, what happened to your hair? For some reason, Timothy had shaved his head and was sleeping, holding Mary. His eyes looked swollen as if he had been crying, and even his eyebrows were shaved. When I shook Timothy in a semi-panic, he eventually opened his eyes.
Oh, Mom.
When Timothy opened his eyes, they were bloodshot, clearly from crying hard. I turned pale. What happened? Where are Kevin and Fiona? I asked desperately, and Timothy looked like he was about to cry again as he spoke.
Fiona screamed at me. It's your fault I'm suffering like this. Reflect on your actions as a man.
Timothy hung his head in sorrow. Listening further, it seems Fiona had a fit of rage when Mary wouldn't stop crying, and then took it out on Timothy, blaming him harshly. How awful. I regretted going to the beauty salon. I should never have left. I deeply regretted my actions.
Then Dad said, if a man needs to reflect, he should shave his head. He brought out the clippers and forcefully shaved me.
It appears Timothy tried to resist, but it was difficult being outnumbered 2-1. He was held down, powerless to stop them. Frustrated, I inadvertently bit my lip. In the end, Timothy was shaved completely, and the satisfied pair, Fiona and her accomplice, had apparently gone somewhere. Hearing Timothy's story filled me with immense anger. I immediately called Kevin. Fortunately, the call connected right away. Where are you? I managed to contain my anger as I asked him. Kevin just laughed carelessly.
On a business trip in Hawaii.
He answered quickly, but I could hear a woman's laughter in the background. I was so irritated with Kevin for lying so casually. It was his fault Timothy ended up like this. Fiona was equally despicable. Timothy was completely bald, with all his body hair shaved off. It was truly too pitiful to behold. I'll definitely make you regret this. After hanging up the phone with Kevin, I looked at Timothy and vowed. Timothy looked very anxious. It's time for Kevin and his ilk to experience hell. How could they do this to Timothy? I was burning with revenge against them. Turning to a pale-faced Timothy, I asked, "What do you want to do, Timothy?" Fiona, a mother, left Mary behind and just took off. "Do you still want to be with someone like that?" Fiona has failed as a mother and is no longer needed as Timothy's wife. Even if she were to come back, she would likely cause more trouble, possibly even harm Mary. The thought of Mary being put in danger made me shudder. Too much negativity for a baby. After a moment of thought, Timothy finally spoke.
I'm going to divorce Fiona. I've always felt inadequate because my salary was low, but I can't risk putting Mary in danger anymore.
It seems this incident had deeply affected Timothy as well. At this point, there's nothing left to do but fight back thoroughly. I smiled and said to Timothy, "That's right, so I'll divorce Kevin too, and the three of us will leave this house."
Mom.
Tears were streaming from Timothy's eyes. I can only imagine how hard it was for him until I got back. Shortly after, I hugged Timothy and we both cried. Then, 2 weeks later, I received a call from Kevin on my cell phone. He kept calling even though I ignored him. Reluctantly, I decided to answer, but maintained a brusque demeanor. "What do you want?" Kevin sounded panicked.
Hey, what happened to our house? What's going on?
I could hear a woman screaming in the background. It seemed things were unfolding just as I had anticipated. I smirked.
Listen up. I've come back from Hawaii, and our house is gone. Where did you take Timothy and Mary?
Fiona screamed into the phone. It turned out that the laughter I had heard during that call with Kevin was indeed Fiona's.
Hey, keep quiet for a second.
Kevin, flustered by Fiona's screaming, started trying to stop her. He probably still thought he could deceive his way out of this. I found their exchange amusing. "Oh really? You said you were away on a business trip. Took your son's wife on vacation. Huh? How could you do that with little Mary still so small?" I then deliberately spoke in an accusing tone to make them feel guilty. Kevin fell silent, having been hit where it hurt, but Fiona responded differently.
What? Jealous old hag. It's more fun for Dad to go on vacation with a young and pretty girl like Fiona than with someone like you.
Fiona confidently lashed out. It seemed she had stopped pretending altogether. She casually called me an old hag. I retorted,
"Your shallow actions will cost you everything, not just the house."
The house was gone, but Kevin and Fiona were about to lose much more. Kevin suddenly realized the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, about the house. Why is it a vacant lot now? And there's a for sale sign.
Kevin sounded troubled. I responded, "Well, I leveled it and sold it to a real estate agent. The house was in my name, after all. No problem selling it, right?" Suddenly, Fiona began to panic.
"What? That big house is that old lady's? Aren't you just a housewife? Why is it in your name if you have no income?"
Fiona couldn't believe it and kept hurling insults at me. It seems Kevin hadn't told her the truth.
"Hey, why isn't that house yours? Were you being blackmailed or something?"
Fiona pressed Kevin for answers, but,
well,
he only gave vague replies. It must be embarrassing for Kevin to admit the truth. He couldn't quite bring himself to say it. I didn't want to prolong this conversation with him any longer, so I decided to just lay out the reality. My family is wealthy, you know. That house was built by my parents as part of my dowry.
What?
Fiona sounded incredulous. My family is well known in the area as an owning clan with ample land and money. Building a house was a trivial matter for them. Hearing this, Fiona turned on Kevin.
"What's going on, Dad? You said that woman is under my thumb and she lives off my charity. Were you lying?"
Kevin was taken aback by her accusations.
Well,
It's pathetic how quickly he changes his demeanor when faced with a little pressure. I had been tolerating his behavior because he was my husband, but I couldn't care less about that now. I sighed and decided to tell them everything. While we're at it, let me tell you, Kevin has no money of his own. He just works at a well-known company. He's actually deep in debt.
Debt? You're kidding.
Fiona was flustered by my revelation. Kevin seemed quite panicked.
Helen, you promised not to say that. You've kept it a secret all this time.
Kevin yelled at me. The truth is, Kevin had debts. When I was busy with Timothy after his birth, Kevin, upset that I wasn't paying attention to him, had an affair. He always wanted to be the center of attention. Kevin showered his mistress with branded bags and jewelry. He was just a junior employee at a big company at the time. He didn't have the means to afford luxury brands. But Kevin, ever the show-off, repeatedly went into debt to please his mistress as she demanded more. By the time I found out, he had amassed hundreds of thousands in debt. When I told Fiona this, she fell silent. She probably never imagined Kevin had debts, considering how well he seemed to be living. And Kevin, seeing Fiona fall silent, desperately tried to placate her.
Money? I can make as much as I want. I'm a division manager at a major company.
However, Fiona seemed unconvinced and wouldn't even discuss it. She must be quite shaken inside. So, I continued to reveal more. That's not all. Kevin frequents the entertainment districts quite a bit and has been playing around a lot. I don't know about those debts though. I wonder how much he has managed to repay. I chuckled confidently as I said that. I could hear Fiona grinding her teeth over the phone, clearly frustrated. Currently, Kevin hardly contributes to the living expenses. He's so overwhelmed by his debts that he came crying to me.
We'll have debt collectors at our house if this continues. That wouldn't be good for Timothy, right? Please, take on all the living expenses.
That's what Kevin said when he pushed the responsibility of paying for living expenses onto me. Normally, a housewife like me couldn't pay for all that. I would have to start working. Fiona finally spoke up, seemingly thinking the same.
Why are you able to pay for living expenses? Even if your family is wealthy, they surely wouldn't support you financially every month, right?
Indeed.
Kevin, pointed out by Fiona, seemed to realize the fact for the first time. He knows so little about his own wife. How can he be so disinterested in me? I said in exasperation. I have rental income from apartments. That's why I receive a steady amount of money every month.
What? What do you mean? I've never heard about this.
Kevin exclaimed loudly in response. Our family has been landowners for generations, owning lots of vacant land around this area. But just holding onto vacant land would incur property taxes, and it would be a waste to let it sit unused. So, my parents decided to build apartments on the vacant lands, and each family member, including me, manages them. Although the construction of the apartments was financed through loans, the rental income exceeds the monthly mortgage repayments. Hearing this, Kevin's voice trembled.
So, you earn more than me. What am I even here for? I could have paid off the debts with that money.
Fiona sounded incredibly frustrated.
I targeted you because I thought you had high income. All this was for nothing. I would have been better off sticking with Timothy. I was sure I could have squeezed some money out of you then.
They continued to probe about my rental income. I told the two, who seemed to think only about money. Can you stop already? It's over for both of you. I'm getting a divorce and will be asking you for alimony.
Alimony.
Hearing about alimony, Kevin recoiled.
Alimony? I have debts and no money. How am I supposed to pay that?
Fiona also pleaded in a shaken voice.
That's right. I don't have an income either.
Didn't you receive branded bags and such? Just sell those. Fiona must have received a lot from Kevin. He even took her to Hawaii. As I spoke in a dismayed voice, Kevin said,
"Those bags were gifts from me anyway. Return them. I can use them to pay off some of my debts."
It seems Kevin was really desperate, not caring about appearances anymore. But Fiona retorted without yielding.
No way. I got them, so I'm keeping them. And it's so tacky to ask for them back.
Fiona scoffed at Kevin. Then Kevin seemed irritated and said,
"What? As if a woman who only knows how to pile on makeup has a say."
What about you? You're the one with debts.
They began to argue heatedly, and I sighed. Talking with these two any further is just a waste of time. Goodbye then. I gently hung up the phone. After that, Kevin and I went through with the divorce. It ended up involving lawyers, but initially Kevin was quite reluctant.
"Isn't there any way other than divorce? I have debts, and my salary is gone after I make the payments. Can't I get some of the rental income?"
Kevin pleaded tearfully at the lawyer's office, but I had no sympathy for him. After all, the debts are because of your affairs, right? It's only right that you pay them off yourself, I told Kevin firmly. Kevin lamented how terrible it was, but the lawyer calmly advised him.
Kevin, you don't contribute to the household expenses, and you've racked up debts from affairs. You haven't been involved in housework or raising Timothy either. What exactly have you been doing for your family?
Challenged sternly by the lawyer, Kevin fell silent. He usually acts big around me and Timothy, but he's quiet in front of someone authoritative like a lawyer. I really think Kevin is a small man. Unable to say anything more, Kevin ended up signing the divorce papers as the lawyer suggested. Right after Kevin signed, I handed him a document. Looking at the document, Kevin was shocked.
"What is this?"
I responded calmly. "It's the claim amount for alimony." Kevin slammed the table in anger.
"What is this amount? It's too high. People don't usually ask for alimony for an affair like this."
I had demanded $200,000 in alimony. I'm aware it's an exorbitant amount, but it's justified given the circumstances. It includes the household expenses you never paid. Compared to what I've paid, it's actually quite reasonable. Kevin had stopped contributing anything to the household expenses, leaving me to cover all the utility and food costs. And yet, I was also responsible for all the housework and raising our child. Since Timothy and the others returned, I have been tirelessly caring for Mary without sleep. During that period, Kevin was having an affair with Fiona. It's truly despicable. When I pointed this out, Kevin was at a loss for words.
"Maybe that's true, but surely this amount is too much. Can't you give a little discount?"
I've never heard of a discounted alimony. I was taken aback, but played my final card. "Did you forget you shaved Timothy's head? I could file a police report, you know." At that, Kevin's expression immediately turned anxious.
"That would be a problem."
Seizing the moment, the lawyer pressed on.
What you've done, even if it's within the family, is inexcusable. If a police report is filed, wouldn't that affect your job?
Kevin works at a well-known company, and if Timothy's situation becomes public, he risks being fired. After some time, Kevin resignedly said,
"All right, I'll accept the $200,000 alimony, but we're still family, right? I can still see you and Timothy occasionally, can't I?"
What nerve to say that now, after putting Timothy in such danger. He's likely hoping to gain sympathy later on to negotiate the alimony. I firmly told him, "Timothy and I will never meet with you again. Once we're divorced, you're just a stranger, and don't expect to see your grandchild either."
"What? Don't joke with me."
Kevin hurled insults at me, but I ignored them and left the lawyer's office. The payment method for the alimony would be handled by the lawyer. I never want to deal with Kevin again. Later on, Kevin was fired from his job. Although I hadn't filed a police report, it seems the company found out anyway. Fiona was the cause. After divorcing Timothy and losing custody of Mary, Fiona tried to rely on Kevin, waiting for him in front of his workplace. But with all his debts and alimony payments, Kevin was stretched too thin. He brushed off awaiting Fiona, who, in a fit of rage, loudly revealed everything about him at the scene. Kevin tried to silence her, but it was too late. Other employees heard, and soon the whole company knew. Kevin has been fired from his job, and now only his debts remain. He might be chased by debt collectors and is likely to face a thorny path ahead. The same goes for Fiona. She is being sued for alimony by Timothy. Even selling all her designer bags wouldn't cover the payments. Moreover, I heard she has a substantial tab from visiting host clubs before marrying Timothy. They are still unpaid. It's likely that soon, Fiona too will be in a situation similar to Kevin's. Since then, I have bought an apartment with the money, and Timothy, Mary, and I are living there together. Mary is adorable, just like Timothy. Timothy's hair has grown back and looks natural now. He's completely recovered.
Mom, I'm sorry for always causing you trouble. I have this child now, and I'll get back on my feet.
Mary is growing up healthy. Her first birthday is coming up soon. I'm committed to making her happy, just Timothy and me. That's what I vowed.